A massive lawsuit is shaking up the entertainment industry, trying to put an end to ticket scalping and sky-high prices. What started as a federal lawsuit has spiraled into legislative action in many states, including here in Wisconsin. WMTV's Tabitha Bland breaks down the bill that's working to make sure you get a fair shot at tickets and how secondary market sellers are feeling about this legislation.
How we got here is shows like Taylor Swift.
There's some bad blood about the reputation of secondary sellers. John Lamoureux leads an online ticket resale company in Wisconsin and has for the last 3 decades.
I think the last one was, Hannah Montana. I think it's teenage girls that have all the power in the world.
He explains entertainment sales catch extra attention when tickets for hot artists are bought up in minutes, a major issue during the Taylor Swift Eras tour.
We certainly understand when a very popular act comes out, your favorite artist, the Taylor Swifts, Bruce Springsteens of the world. When they come out, a lot of people, they have great fan bases that want to see these acts.
Dustin Brighton with the Coalition for Ticket Fairness says the Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster aims to bring ticket prices down.
If tickets are being restricted on the primary market, well, there's less supply. Well, what's going to happen with prices? Again, prices go way up.
Meanwhile, Wisconsin legislators are working to create new laws like the Swiftie bill, which would cap resale prices while limiting how many tickets someone can buy.
You're going to have your Brewers Cubs and your Packers Bears tickets that are going to be pricey. But at the same time, what a lot of people don't realize is we often sell tickets below face value.
Something that wouldn't be possible without the resale market.
Making sure there aren't any price caps keeps us in business and doesn't allow Ticketmaster to have so much power.
Competition in between websites and those who sell tickets is never a bad thing for consumers.
For WMTV 15 News, I'm Tabitha Bland.
Tabitha, thank you. There was a hearing on the bill earlier this week. Now, we have reached out to Live Nation and Ticketmaster for comment multiple times over the last 2 days, but they have not responded.